Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. By the way, before we get into things, I know they're not as popular on YouTube right now anyway, but I did a few old style lore videos you guys might enjoy, including a versus video, much requested. I'm going to include those down in the description just in case you missed them, and because today we are doing more of a news and opinion style video, which I know a lot of you like, but some of you don't. So I wanted to talk about Star Wars Outlaws, and the more that I've been playing this game, the more I actually stand by the review I released earlier, I guess last week at this point. The question I asked in that video was, is Star Wars Outlaws worth buying? And my answer was, if you're not a Star Wars fan, can't recommend Star Wars Outlaws, but you're probably not watching this channel. If you can get Star Wars Outlaws on the Ubisoft Pass for like 20 bucks and beat it in 1 month, that's probably fine. Full 150, can't say I'd recommend that. But I'm not here to recount my review. You can watch that if you want. I just thought it was worth kind of looking at the reaction to the game's launch and the greater context around its release, because Star Wars Outlaws has some problems. Many of them self-inflicted, but others not quite. And I also want to start this video by pushing back against the idea that the Disney era has been notoriously bad for Star Wars games, because I just don't agree with that. Nor can I get behind Outlaws being like a historically bad game. The fact is, Star Wars has had its gaming golden era, or really even multiple eras. But there have been valleys alongside the mountains. If you look at, say, 2003 to 2006, over that 3-year period, we had Empire at War, 2 Knights of the Old Republic games, Jedi Academy, Star Wars Battlefront, the Revenge of the Sith game, Republic Commando, and more. Like, just an absolutely incredible slate. But it would be wrong to categorize the entire pre-Disney era as having that type of output, and in fact, if we look at the final years of LucasArts, there's really not a lot there. In the 2010s, for example, we got Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, not a great game in my opinion, a couple of Lego games, The Old Republic, which I will give credit to, and really just a ton of small experiences for kids. When you look at the EA and now Lucasfilm Games era, compared to that, I mean, things look alright. Now, we're going to come back to that because it's not a fair comparison, but we've had good games since the Disney buyout. A few really good games, like, I know I'm in the minority, but Star Wars Squadrons may be my favorite Star Wars game of all time. And evidently my baby agrees as well. Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, both excellent. Battlefront 1 I thought was a major miss. Battlefront 2 pretty good. And now Outlaws to me feels like a very middle of the road experience. And that's where I get to the context, because to me Outlaws is a bit a victim of circumstance. While I do think EA's release of games is better than what came in the years preceding the Disney sale, there's a major difference there that we can't ignore. EA was pumping out games when Star Wars was at a massive resurgence in popularity. There was a new trilogy releasing. So the more appropriate comparison point is really to Star Wars when the prequels were releasing, which, as we pointed out earlier, was one of the golden eras. I think the quality of the games releasing is up there, but obviously the amount of games leaves a lot to be desired, and that all comes back to that EA exclusivity deal. Obviously, EA is a massive publisher with a number of developers under their umbrella, but it's pretty clear that that deal was bad for Star Wars game fans. Maybe it made sense to Star Wars, maybe it made sense to EA, I don't know. However, it was such a missed opportunity, and I just think about how popular The Force Awakens was, especially in North America. Unadjusted for inflation, which admittedly is a big caveat, it's still the #1 domestically grossing film of all time, beating even No Way Home, Endgame, and the like. The next film released, Rogue One, also a big hit, and I imagine with the suspected success of the sequels at that point and what appeared to be, a new reign of dominance, we can argue about how much that actually worked out, there would have been so many companies eager to slap the Star Wars name on a game with the prospect of incredible sales. And I think that Star Wars Battlefront 1, which was, in my opinion, a sub-mediocre experience, still selling well, proves that they would have been correct. And yeah, to me, Battlefront 1, absolute shell of a game, like almost a tech demo for me. At its time, highest selling Star Wars game in history, over, according to Wikipedia, 13 million units sold. The problem is, other companies could not get their hands on the Star Wars brand because of that exclusivity deal. So what should have been the most productive, the most creative, the most popular era for the franchise in terms of video game releases ended up being a total wasteland. I really think about this missed opportunity a lot. The variety of games we should have got, everything from, AA style Super Star Wars tie-ins to the sequel trilogy to massive AAA games tying in directly to the films or perhaps the era, like we saw LucasArts help execute masterfully with the Clone Wars. I don't know. I don't think it's controversial to say that people have been noticing this lack of content and have been frustrated. That puts a lot more attention on a game like Star Wars Outlaws, probably the only major Star Wars game release for a couple of years. It's been advertised for a while. It's meant to usher in the sort of new era of Star Wars gaming, and it's obviously, I think, just all right. But it's being put in a situation where being just all right is not enough, or at least it doesn't feel like enough. If Star Wars Outlaws was being released in a time where we were getting games every year, they've said they want to get a AAA release and a smaller release every year, I don't think it gets nearly as much criticism from Star Wars fans as it has. But not only is Outlaws standing on its own, but it's also been really probably over-marketed and overexposed to fans. This game was first introduced, I think, 4 years ago, early on in the process, and it was largely because at the time, Lucasfilm needed something to show off with the exclusivity deal ending. And in a way, Ubisoft was kind of the perfect choice. They don't really rock the boat too much, and I think that's one of my biggest complaints about Star Wars Outlaws. It's an extremely safe experience. It is, I think, a relatively polished experience. It's obviously not, in my opinion, dreadfully bad. It doesn't take any huge risks, and the presentation, at least of the world, is really good. I think it makes sense why it was the Star Wars game they used to sort of help usher in this new era. Personally, I've got a lot of problems with how Ubisoft operates, and I sort of hinted at it. A lot of the games feel like shades of past experiences. And I try to think about unique gameplay aspects which Star Wars Outlaws brings, which will be memorable. Like if I talk about Star Wars Squadrons, it's the arena-style 5-on-5 space combat. If I think about Fallen Order, it's a casual Dark Souls experience in the Star Wars universe, which we've never really had before. Outlaws is a very basic shooting and stealth system, which wouldn't have been out of place in a game like 15 years ago. So while I do give Outlaws, a bit of grace, because I think that the expectations thrust on the game are maybe not realistic. And also the same thing happened to Battlefront 2, where we were getting like no Star Wars games. So Battlefront 2 tried to be a little bit of everything. I talked to the devs about this. They wanted to make a Starfighter game because we weren't getting any of those. They wanted to make a shooter. They wanted to make a great campaign and a great multiplayer. And in my opinion, that was sort of a subtraction by addition when it comes to the result. But while there was this pressure, I also don't think Ubisoft helps anybody by kind of phoning it in a bit when it comes to gameplay design, and also being quite aggressive with how the game was priced and the immediate hop to further purchases. But those are just sort of my thoughts. Sort of to sum it up, I think if Outlaws is released in a time like, say, 2003 to 2006, where we're getting all of these games, I think it's remembered pretty fondly. And it's controversial, but I'd say that of that era, we have a good example of that. Republic Commando. There's a lot of love to that game, and like Outlaws, a lot of the aesthetics are really great, but the gameplay is also, in my opinion, pretty shallow. The squad mechanic is at least unique, but it's a very, very short game with not a lot to do. But again, your thoughts please down below, and I'll see you next time. Please like this video if you like it.